If you've ever found yourself spiraling down a late night rabbit hole of what am I meant to do and why haven't I found it yet? And let's be honest, who hasn't? Then you're in the right place. I'm Theresa White, career clarity expert and 5-time certified career coach, and I'm here to help you navigate the question of how to find a career that truly lights you up. On Career Clarity Unlocked, we're all about those light bulb moments. I'm talking to people who are still trying to figure out what they're meant to do, coaching them live to reach that magical, yes, this is it moment. And we'll also hear from those who've already found their dream careers and figure out exactly how they did it. Whether you're looking for inspiration or actionable advice on finding a career you love, I've got you covered. Time to unlock some career clarity. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Career Clarity Unlocked. Today is one of those extra special episodes because it's a coaching session, which means I get to do what I absolutely love. Coach someone live right here on the show. These sessions are always really exciting because they're honest, real, and full of those aha moments we can all relate to. Now, today's coaching conversation is based on something I use all the time in my work, the Sparketype assessment, an amazing assessment developed by Jonathan Fields. It helps you understand the kind of work that makes you feel fully alive, like the stuff that fills you with meaning and puts you right into that sweet spot of flow. Basically, it is your career compass. Our guest today has a primary Sparketype of the advisor, which means she loves guiding, mentoring, and supporting others and really lights up when she gets to do that type of work. Her shadow Sparketype is the Maven. That means having this deep, lifelong love for learning. And her anti-Sparketype, which is the work that is a heavier lift and draining, is the performer, which suggests that being front and center is not the place where she gets her energy from. We're going to unpack how all of that shows up in her career journey, how her mental health plays a role in it all, and what kind of work really energizes and drains her. So if you've ever wondered how to find work that actually feels good for your soul, stick around. This is going to be a beautiful one. Let's get started. Do you mind walking me through your professional path in a nutshell, if that is possible?
Sure. So I started working mainly in retail when I was much younger.
Mm-hmm.
And then around 2006, I started in social services. And I've been doing that ever since. So I've done all different types of settings. You're talking about hospital, nursing home, group home, apartment treatment program. I've worked in many settings and I've worked with different populations. So I've worked with SPMI, AIDS, substance abuse, medical, just a wide range of different settings. I'm not working right now, taking time off to take care of myself. I am a mental health consumer. And we talked about this, that, I was struggling and I realized that I need to take a break to really figure out what I want to do and to also heal myself.
Yes, that is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's made me question whether or not I'm supposed to be in this field. Am I capable of taking on the responsibility for such a long period of time to do the work?
Yeah.
But when I did Sparketype, it was interesting. So I said to myself, maybe I'm in the right field. I just need to have more confidence in myself and figure out ways to remotivate myself. My mental health has impacted me greatly over the last 20-something years. And it has impacted my ability to maintain employment for long periods of time. Like I could do a year or two, and then it gets a little hectic, So I'm just interested. I'm saying, maybe I'm not as passionate at it as I used to be, but I don't know if that's true. I spoke to an old client of mine, and I went right into clinician mode. I know she's like, I'm just calling to see how you were. She's like, I didn't expect this.
But that was your relationship with her. So it makes sense that it takes you right back there.
Right. Yeah.
And I love that you were sharing that so honestly, because it's right, like our work life isn't separate from our personal life or who we are. Like mental health is so real, like it impacts me too. And we can't just turn that off and function for 8 hours a day and then turn it back on. Like it's just would be nice if that worked.
It doesn't define you, but it's a part of you.
Right, exactly. It is a part of you. It doesn't define you, but it is a part. I fully agree with that. Yeah. So you said when you took the Sparketype assessment, and the Sparketype assessment never box you in. Like it's not like you're the advisor, so you have to become a social worker. It just, I love the Sparketype assessment because it shines a light on areas in you that suggest that light you up and that motivate you and that energize you, and others that deplete you. But then also, if you do too much of it, it can also be really draining. So we'll figure out how that has shown up for you in the past. So you already said it was really interesting, and your primary Sparketype showed up as the advisor, and that's the love for coaching, mentoring, guiding others, supporting others through their journey. How did that resonate with you when that came up?
It made perfect sense because I do like helping other people. I used to put in my cover letter to employers, I'm not just a social worker by degree, I'm a social worker by heart. So I really like to help people be their best selves, even if it's just giving resources to someone who may need them to help them out. You know, that's what I like to do.
Yeah.
But I really do like counseling. I really do like sitting down with someone and talking to someone and trying to help them sift through their issues, try to help them see a brighter picture, you know, or help them figure out what they can and cannot control, as I've learned over the last couple of years. Sometimes it's not about, oh, this is what you can do to solve this. It might not be in their control, but teaching them how to choose that this is what I'm going to do to cope with it. And I'm going to move forward, and I can move forward. I don't have to be stuck, you know, things like that I've learned. So I just pass it on.
That's beautiful. And it seems to come so natural to you. And
yes,
you do really with your heart, not just for the paycheck, but because you really care about the people.
Right.
Yeah. And so that seems to be very, very aligned. And it's beautiful that you went into that direction. Now, there's also a thing that when we do too much of the work we love, especially in the more service-driven Sparketypes like the advisor, we can do too much, where I always like to think about it as like the Sparketype, when we do the work that energizes us, our inner battery fills itself. When we do the more heavy lift, maybe the anti-Sparketype, it drains our battery. Now, if we do the work we love and it fills our battery, there can also be a point where we do it too much and we pour too much into other people, and then it actually depletes us.
Right. And I think that definitely happened to me several times. And that's where my mental health meets my professional life, because it impacts it. And then I find myself not as productive, or not feeling like I'm up to par for the job, or feeling incompetent. And it's a terrible feeling because, you know, I have a lot of knowledge. It's just sometimes I get lost in the sauce.
Yeah. And that's human. We all have different energy tanks. Actually, like really, what really spoke to me is also I read an analogy from a trauma survivor of, you have less spoons. Like you have just less spoons of energy a day than someone who doesn't have mental health struggles. So you don't all have the same amount of energy. And it makes sense that you love the work you do and you're really great at it. But once you do too much and you give too much, then your tank is empty and you can't do your best work, and you're not healthy and you can't perform at your best.
Right. Absolutely. And that's how I felt. And it kind of takes away from me, because I feel like, you know, when I take these periods of time to myself, which I have been out of work before, and I intentionally stopped working, it's really taken a toll on me in terms of my confidence and my feeling that I'm capable of doing the work. And it's not that the work doesn't get done, but I just feel like it's not where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could be, because I am a perfectionist, and that's another issue. So I could just be giving myself a hard time and being too hard on myself. And I have been told that I'm too hard on myself by a lot of people.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, I got people's lives in my hands, like people get affected by how you treat them and how you work with them and how you help them or don't help them, so
You
that
carry
does matter to me.
you carry so much responsibility.
Yeah.
When you think on different parts back in your career, was there ever a time where it felt like a healthy amount, where you did the work, the counseling work, social work, but it wasn't so much that it emptied you out?
It's always at the beginning, like the first maybe 6 to 8 months, I am all game. I am good to go. And then I just get drained by my mental health and it just takes over.
Yeah.
And a lot of what social workers do, even as case managers or counselors and stuff like that, direct care workers, and I've done all of that before I became a master social worker. But all of those type of jobs can be draining because there's a lot of documentation. It's a lot of hands-on work with the client. And there are things that come up in the job that you're responsible for if it happens. There could be a complaint and you have to do or incident where somebody fell. You have to do an incident report in a nursing home.
Yeah.
There's documentation for care plans. There's documentation for progress and goals and all this other stuff that has to be done in addition to anything that just comes up.
Yeah.
So no matter what type of social service work you do, it's very challenging.
So when we're looking at the work, there is client-facing work and then there is not client-facing work, the documentation. What's the time allocation for both on average? I know every role is different, but is it like you have 30 hours a week with clients and you're supposed to get the documentation done in 10 hours, but that's never realistic?
Well, the thing about documentation is it is state regulated. So, when you have an agency or an office or a program that accepts Medicaid and other insurances, they have a deadline for how long you have to submit that note or that care plan.
Yeah.
So a lot of social workers, especially in nursing homes, find themselves staying past their time just to get notes done.
Yeah.
And because you constantly talk with families, friends, to the people who you're taking care of, those can possibly be notes as well. But you have to make sure that things that are pertinent to the care of the patient is documented properly.
Right.
So that can take time and it can be stressful because if you were like in a nursing home setting, you can have anywhere between 20 to 120 patients that you're responsible for, which can be 2 to 3 floors.
Wow.
1 to 3 floors of people.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller nursing homes only have 1 to 2 social workers, and I've seen just one social worker handle 120 people.
That's a lot.
Yes.
So you have a lot of client-facing time and a lot of documentation. If you could pick between one of the two, like if one could come without the other, which one would there be like, just let me do this and not have to deal with that?
Well, I wish I didn't have to document as much.
Okay.
So I would rather be counseling because I think that's the most helpful.
Yeah.
And I like talking to people. I like getting inside their minds and see what they're thinking and what they're going through. I like to hear what people are going through and see how they've coped with it and what might be healthy, what might not be healthy.
Mm-hmm. And there's the Maven, your shadow Sparketype. That's the love for learning. And I wonder for you if that shows up a lot when you can get into someone else's mind and really understand how they view the world and what they've been through and what their experiences have been like.
Right. Yes. And when I was working, the job I had before, I never worked with children in this capacity before, where I'm interviewing kids for a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation and then documenting it as a CCA.
Mm-hmm.
And I was nervous as heck because I don't want to mess up. And these kids, kids are unique. They all have their own personalities and their own ways of expressing themselves. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, I don't want to mess this up. And I don't think I ever messed it up, but I was always really nervous dealing with, especially the younger kids, because you have to really communicate with them differently. And I kind of learned that a little bit because I had interviews quite a bit of children who were experiencing some things, have been in domestic violence, who've been in a household with domestic violence, or they were being abused, or they were adopted because their parents were on crack cocaine or heroin or anything like that. And there's been sexual abuse that's been mentioned. So it can be triggering for me because I've experienced something like that. Not all of it, but something like that. And I know how devastating that can be. And I can only imagine since I was a teenager when it happened to me, but some of these kids are like 6, 7, 8 years old, being bullied in school and having to cope with, why does nobody like me? What's wrong with me? Or something's wrong with me because nobody likes me.
Well, that breaks your heart.
Oh, does it? And it's like, oh my goodness, what a weight to carry on your shoulder as a young kid, let alone some person like me who's an adult, but it's weighing on me because I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening to them. And some kids the teenagers come in with really bad behaviors, and they are aggressive physically and verbally, and the parents want to get them some therapy to get them help. So they come in for a psychiatric evaluation. And I'm for the most part, I would say I don't think I had any issues with any of the kids that came, whether they were young or teenagers. So I was kind of like shocked at myself, and especially when I dealt with um, a child who had a trauma of sexual abuse. Well, there was 2 children that come to mind that had sexual abuse, but I think I handled it really well. Um, and I went on YouTube to prepare myself how to talk with a young child about a trauma because it's a little bit different for someone who's 5 or 6 or 7 years old to be talking about something like that. And then sometimes they give you subtle clues of something that was traumatic for them. So you really have to be able to understand and be open and listen to what they're telling you and really get what they're telling you.
Was that part of the work, even though it was really heavy and heartbreaking, was it also rewarding and fulfilling?
Well, what was fulfilling about it is when I talked to the kids because they would listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant a lot to me because, like I said, I really thought I would be horrible at it when it came down to the kids. And, talking to an adult is one thing, but talking to kids is totally different. And they're going through so much now. They got so much going on. So I just want to make sure that I'm asking the right questions and getting all the information that they're telling me.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. So when you were working with the kids, I know there was anxiety or worry about doing it well enough, but
Right.
did you enjoy it more or less than working with adults?
Well, I wasn't as nerve-wracked with the adults.
Mm-hmm.
I was more nerve-wracked with the kids because I really don't want to confuse them or make them feel more traumatized,
Yeah.
and I hope I never did that to anyone. So I think that once I finished with each child, I was thankful that I got through it. And I kind of notated to myself, like, you did a good job, Natasha. That wasn't bad, you know? And I've been told by a couple of people that I should work with kids, but I'm not sure if that's my calling.
Yeah. What does, when you think about not so heavy, serious mental health concerns, more kids in a setting that might still need help, but not where the pressure is so high that you say the wrong thing and you can re-traumatize them. Would you feel more drawn to that just in your gut? Is your gut like, yeah, I'd love to work with kids, or your gut is like, no, adults, no right or wrong?
My gut says I rather work with adults.
Okay, that's perfect. And then you've also worked in an elder care home. Is that something you enjoyed? Like when you're thinking about age groups, what is there, where is your gut saying like, oh, I would like to work with these types of people more? Or also other types of populations maybe that you worked with?
Well, I have worked with the geriatric population extensively.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fond of the geriatric population. I really was. I really enjoyed counseling them, talking to them, making sure they got their needs met.
Yeah.
And I also enjoyed the veterans geriatric population because when I was doing my internship for my master's, I worked at the VA hospital for a year. And um, I enjoyed interviewing and learning how to interview someone who might not be open to talking about what they're experiencing and why they need a social worker for resources or whatnot.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting
Yeah. And
because it's a different dynamic.
right. And I feel like that you are in a line of work where you really get to do work that energizes you. Like you get to guide people, be with people, coach them, mentor them, and learn about them. It's just finding the balance of how do you do that so that your battery stays at a capacity that it feels healthy. It's not you're doing it too much that it empties you out, or you don't do it at all, which most probably wouldn't feel good. So it's finding that. So it sounds like when you work with geriatrics or veterans, that feels like that part felt good.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then what was the heaviest lift there? What was it like if I could have kept doing this job if it wouldn't have been for XYZ? Is it the workload or all the documentation or?
It's definitely the documentation. Because it took me about anywhere from an hour and 45 minutes to 3 hours to do the documentation because it's extensive. It's not just the HPI that you have to do for the CCA. There's a whole software where all these questions have to be answered, and you have to input information based off your interview with the client who's looking for services.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time. And when I was full-time, I was supposed to do 12. Then I went down to 10. Then I became part-time, only doing 6. And either way, I found myself very stressed.
And the stress mainly came from the documentation of like,
Right.
you could have maybe done another hour caring for someone or being in conversation with someone, but another hour of that documentation felt really heavy. Is that?
Right.
Yeah. I also want to briefly talk about your the performer.
Now that was interesting, Theresa. But go ahead and
Yeah.
say what you're gonna say, because I want to say something too, but I want to finish. I want you to finish what you was gonna say.
No, thank you. So one, the Sparketype assessment never tells us we're good or bad at something. It just suggests what fills our tank or our battery and what empties it.
Right.
The performer is that enlivening, energizing, like it doesn't have to be performing on a stage, but being the one who energizes, entertains a situation, a meeting, an audience. And it is the most common anti-Sparketype because also public speaking is the second biggest fear of humans behind dying. So there's no surprise of that being the most common one. How did that resonate for you?
Well, I was not shocked, but then I was like, really? Like, okay. So when I saw that, I said, the performer, I said, I like to sing. And my voice is not the way it used to be.
Okay.
In terms of the notes that I used to be able to do. But I'm going to be working on that probably this fall in terms of getting a vocal coach to get my voice back in control. But thank you. But I think that it's the anti-Sparketype because it's overwhelming. I am scared as 𝗬𝘓𝘂. And I've never really performed in front of anyone. I mean, I performed in front of friends and they thought, well, Tosh, you got a voice. I even recorded myself. I still have that recording. And I sounded pretty good.
Wow.
But that's how I thought about it. I said, it's your auntie because you are scared. You don't know what you're doing.
That's so beautiful. And one doesn't exclude the other. You can absolutely love singing and be great at it, but still be nervous when you perform in front of others.
Right.
And also, it doesn't mean you can't or should never do that type of work. You could even be a public speaker and have the anti as a performer and say, I still want to do that work because I love sharing my knowledge with the audience. But I know that when I go on stage, it's going to be a heavy lift. I want to make sure I'm really prepared up front. Afterwards, I might want to schedule a 30-minute coffee break or walk in nature or whatever fills my tank. So it's not saying don't ever do it, but it just suggests like when you have to do a lot of that work, if you had to do that 8 hours every single day, it might be a really heavy lift. And we can navigate it as like, some people are like, I just never want to do it. And that's okay. And you might be like, no, I want to sing in front of an audience. I want to share that with them. Am I going to be super nervous? Yeah. Do I need to give myself some space and time before and after? Probably, yes. But I still feel really proud of having done it? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So that's one of my goals is to either do a gig or do a talent show. And a talent show will probably be more suitable because then I really get to see people say whether or not, hey, this is good or boo.
I would love to hear you sing here. If you want to try it out here, we can ask our podcast audience.
Well, it's not ready yet. Let me work on the voice first.
All right.
And then
All right.
you can always figure something out to get it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that resonated with you, the anti-performer. It sounds like it's not something that was a huge, heavy lift in your work. Or was there times where you felt like you had to be in a spotlight and that felt heavier?
When my mental health gets intense and I'm symptomatic, that can play a role in me being able to lead a meeting in terms of remembering things that the patient or the client has gone through. And initially that was never a problem. But over the years, I've realized that has become an issue. My memory has somewhat deteriorated in terms of me being able to recall certain things. And I don't feel comfortable about that because, information is important and anything pertaining to the client or the patient needs to be relayed to all the teams so that they know what's going on. And if someone told you something and you don't remember that can be a problem. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And then that becomes the added pressure of it, like already worrying about it. And then it becomes even harder to do.
Right.
So running meetings preferably minimize that.
Right. Now, as a social worker, especially in a nursing home setting, but it also happens in other settings that social workers lead the meeting. And you need to know what's going on with your client and what needs to be done to resolve whatever issues they may be having or whatever they're coming in for.
Yeah.
So it's been times where I felt like I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. No, yeah, I hear you. So from what I'm thinking, as you're thinking about professionally moving forward, one thing I think is what you want to get out of is not necessarily about the part of caring for people, but having so much documentation and the meetings and that pressure in having obviously a manageable workload.
Right.
But if your primary function wouldn't have to be assessment of clients, but more assisting clients, I wonder if that would feel more like just more aligned.
When you're saying assisting clients, it's assisting them in what?
So I'm thinking, I just pulled up a couple of things here on my end. So one, for example, community outreach, providing resources for the community, organizing community events. So that's more, there's not all that clinical tracking and assessment and documentation. It's just that providing resources for people who need it.
Mm-hmm.
Support workers of like where you're more the hands-on practical or emotional support for someone without being a therapist or counselor or having to do that documentation. So it wouldn't be a licensed role, but the support role, like family support worker or resident support staff or community support advocate. How do those roles feel to you?
I feel that the support worker, if I can still counsel, and because see, the thing is, if you are doing clinical work, then documentation is huge.
Right.
But if it's just like counseling and support, I think that's something that I can handle.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think about roles that take that huge, heavy documentation away. And also, it sounds like the responsibility of not being able to make one mistake because you have so much responsibility in that role. And then it comes to documentation, the assessment. Those all seem to be the heavier lifts versus the being there for the client. That sounds like something that doesn't feel as heavy and draining for you.
Right.
Yeah. I would say like the ones that have a lot of documentation are like the case manager, what you've been doing, therapist, clinician, counselor, mental health professional, those are all. But when you go more into the coaching side, for example, where obviously you don't address really deep mental health issues, like you wouldn't do trauma work, but it is more guiding people for where they are right now and providing that type of support that then doesn't require all that extra.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that would be an easier, so I'm thinking like community outreach worker where that's more working with the community, as I explained, or even in an elder care or group home, like for example, an activities coordinator where you lead the activities, educational activities, or the programs the group does. That could also be a way of being engaged with the people you're working with, not having to do that documentation.
I think I could see myself working in a group home or community outreach. I don't know. Because usually with that, there's a lot of traveling, and I really don't want to.
It's not always. It's the thing that is going to be pay, if that's going to be up to par. But there's, for example, like I'm thinking about here locally. Obviously, I'm in Hawaii, so very different. But there's, for example, a nonprofit that provides medical care for mothers and babies. And their community outreach their goal is how can we get this service to the people who need it? Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to build relationships with to bring it to the people who need it? So that's,
Right.
for example, their community outreach. So there's not necessarily any long-term travel, but they might be a little bit like driving to a community center or meeting someone at a church or meeting someone at this location. So there's a little bit of that local travel, but not extended travel generally.
Okay. I think that would be something to look into. I mean, right now, I am still trying to engage in self-care and really trying to heal myself. I've been through a lot in my life, and I'm just trying to make sure that whatever job that I do get, it is what I want to do.
Right.
Not just because I need to get paid to pay bills. I'm a very responsible person, and it matters to me that I'm able to pay my bills, but I want something that's fulfilling. So,
Right.
the next job I take, I really want to be something that I'm like, no, this is it. I think this is it right here.
Yeah.
And I want to feel passionate about it. I want to wake up in the morning and say, "Ooh, I can't wait to get to work so that I can work with my people."
Yes. Yeah. I would say to look really for roles, and as you're healing, giving yourself this time, which I'm so glad that you are doing that, could be the time to just explore of what types of roles are there where I get to support people without all that clinical part of it. Where can I just be there and be that support for the people, and then don't have to stress about the assessment, the documentation, everything that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it could also be, actually, that's another thing to think about is, is it important for you that when you see clients, that it's a relationship, a long-term relationship, like you see them over weeks or months or even years? Or could you be like in a role where it's just, they come to you once for support and then you might not see them again?
Well, I've done both. I have worked with clients that I probably never saw again because they came to me for a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation and diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a one-time thing. And I didn't mind that. It's just the documentation was too extensive. And then I have done therapy work as well, briefly. And I've done lots of counseling over my time because as a case manager, you kind of slide onto the clinical side kind of a bit. But
Yeah.
for billing purposes, you don't say you're clinical, but you do provide counseling, because when you are dealing with people in an apartment treatment program or any program where they're receiving services to get themselves to thrive and move forward in their life, you do have to touch on some counseling, because you have to let them know, this is what you can do, or this is how you can look at it, or this is what you're doing to cope, but let me give you some additional ways of coping. You still have to deal with that part, especially if you know that it's going to be beneficial to the client.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like I might counsel them on medication management. Are you taking your meds? I see that, I counted your meds and I see that you're not taking this, or you're almost out of this. When are you going to refill it? Make sure that you refill as soon as you know that you're about to run out, like stuff like that. So just counseling on stuff like that.
And if you would do that without having to worry about documenting every piece over and over and over, would that feel okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's two types of roles you might want to just keep thinking about and looking into. One is like being that resource person of where you provide resources. So people come to you and it's information on housing or medication, like how to set up a schedule for your medication or navigating daily activities, right? Or the services a nonprofit or an organization or even a for-profit provides. That could be one direction. And the other direction is then, and that's where you see people maybe just once or maybe twice, but it's not that relationship building. Or when you were in a group home or an elderly care home and you're an in-house support coordinator, support role, and that is then more building the long-term relationships because you see the same people on a continuous basis. And also see what are the roles that still have a lot of contact with the clients or the members in the home without everything that just feels so heavy.
Right. Okay. Well, I could see myself doing that. It's just when I think about the clinical work, I'm like, I wanted to do that because I wanted to be a therapist initially.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how much work really gets poured into this stuff. It's really a lot. I think it's a lot even more so now because I'm an LCSWA and there's a lot of documentation and going over and reviewing my notes and reviewing my evaluation of the client and reviewing how I diagnosed or came up with the conclusion that this was the best diagnosis, all of that I'm learning still.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to ever take that off the table completely. It just might be a good in-between phase to be, because it makes so much sense why you're drawn to the roles of social worker and therapist, because it's the Maven and the advisor. You get to learn about people and then guide, support, coach them. That is the work. That is really the work. So it makes so much sense that you're drawn to that. The unfortunate thing is just the mountain of documentation it comes with. And also, so you don't have to say, I'll never do that, but you can say, for now, it would feel better to be in a role where I can still learn about people, hear their stories, support and guide them, but don't have to do this. What feels so heavy, the documentation and so much pressure on you.
It's definitely something that I'm thinking about. And now that you had this conversation with me, it makes me think more clearly that maybe that's just where I'm at right now. It doesn't mean that I can't go back to clinical work. Maybe that's just not for me right now.
Yeah. There are seasons in our lives for everything.
Right.
There are seasons in our lives for everything. Sometimes we're in a season of growth and pushing forward. And other times we're in a season of rest, reflection, or reimagining what's next. And that's not just okay, it's necessary. Today's coaching conversation was such a powerful reminder of how deeply personal and layered our career journeys can be. Our guest has spent years doing profoundly meaningful work in social services, supporting vulnerable populations, counseling clients through trauma, and advocating for those who often go unheard. Her passion and heart are undeniable, but so is her exhaustion, and that matters just as much. As we talked, one thing became crystal clear. She's doing the right kind of work, just in the wrong container. The spark is still there. Her Sparketype as an advisor came through so clearly in how naturally she slips into a counseling role, even outside of work. And her Maven side is alive and well in her hunger to understand people's minds, their stories and their struggles. But what's been crushing her spirit isn't the people, it's the pressure, the excessive documentation, the clinical red tape, the impossibly high standards, the weight of perfectionism on top of already heavy caseloads. It's not her ability that's the issue here. It's the structure of the roles she's been in. Moving forward, I recommend a path for her that allows her to stay connected to the work she loves, serving others, counseling, supporting, but without the parts that burn her out. So here were a few recommendations I shared with her. Look for roles with high emotional connection, but low administrative and clinical burden. That means direct client support without the diagnostic pressure. Human-centered work with boundaries in place. Stable roles and established systems. Not solo entrepreneurial work or high-intensity leadership. Positions where she can give, but without draining her own battery dry. Some of the roles that might be worth looking into for her next include a resident support specialist role at either an elder care or group home, because she shared how much she enjoys working with geriatric clients and how it feels natural and fulfilling. This role allows her to build long-term relationships, offer emotional support, and be present with people in a meaningful way, and without the heavy lift of the heavy type of documentation or therapy notes. It's not clinical work, it's human work, and it honors both her empathy but also her energy limitations. Another role that came to mind for me is a community outreach coordinator role at either a nonprofit or in a healthcare setting, because she truly lights up when she talks about connecting people to resources. And such a role would put her in that sweet spot where she gets to be the bridge between people and the services they need, advocate for support systems, and coach individuals and families through accessing care. It's impactful without being so intense. Another role she could look into is a family support worker role. This path taps into her social services background, but with a gentler structure. Instead of managing full caseloads or handling clinical documentation, she would collaborate with other professionals to support families in crisis, bringing empathy, structure, and stability without carrying the full therapeutic load. The next idea I had is client advocate roles, because she worked with veterans before and spoke about how meaningful that was. And being a client advocate in a hospital or as a veteran service organization would allow her to continue that work from a place of strength, supporting patients through transitions, advocating for their needs, ensuring continuity of care, and offering that guiding voice she naturally embodies. And my final suggestion is a role as life enrichment or activities coordinator at organizations like adult daycare programs or assisted living. This might sound lighthearted, but don't underestimate the depth of meaning in this work. She would be building relationships, creating joy, and facilitating emotional connection in a structured, supportive way. It's still counseling, just not in a clinical format. It's presence, guidance, listening, and care, without the overwhelming stress and paperwork. Each of these roles speaks to who she is at her core. Someone who wants to show up with heart, be fully present with others, and support their journey toward healing or stability. None of these roles diminish her experience. They honor it. They let her continue doing what she's brilliant at in a way that doesn't cost her health or identity. And if you're listening and finding yourself nodding along, feeling like, that's me too, take this as a sign. It's not about throwing away your training or your passions or your years of experience. It's about reframing them and doing that work in a different way. You can still make a difference, still be deeply connected to the people you serve, but do it in a way that fills you up instead of drains you dry. If you're in that season of figuring out what's next, let's talk. We offer free consultation calls to help you understand where you currently are, reconnect with your career strengths, and build a professional path that's finally aligned with who you truly are. The link to book is below in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, and I can't wait to see you back here next week. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Career Clarity Unlocked. If you're feeling stuck in that what's next spiral and are ready to finally break free, let's chat. You can book your free career clarity call where we'll uncover what's really important to you, tackle any obstacles holding you back, and map out your best next step. Schedule your free 30-minute call today on careerbloomcoaching.com. And before you head out, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. If today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration, please leave a review. It really helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend or on social media. Your support truly means the world. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.